Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His black suit felt tight against his shoulders as he looked up at the enormous room. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. 12 different alien species sat in a circle around him, each group on platforms that floated in the air. The humans had waited 3 years for this meeting. 3 long years of sending messages, asking for permission to speak, and being ignored. Now they finally had their chance to defend themselves in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Jake's hands shook slightly as he opened his folder. Behind him stood Colonel Lisa Hayes and Dr. Sam Parker, the only other humans allowed in the chamber. Lisa wore her military uniform with its rows of medals. Sam carried a briefcase full of documents that nobody would probably read. The Zephyrians spoke first. It looked like tall, thin people made of living crystal. Their leader, High Counselor Vex Thara, stood on a platform that glowed with blue light. When she talked, her voice came through machines that made it sound like wind chimes. "The human species has broken the sacred accords," she said. Her crystal face showed no emotion. "They have built colonies where they should not. They have made weapons we did not approve. They have talked to species we told them to avoid." Jake tried to step forward, but a force field stopped him. He could speak, but he could not move closer to the council members. "We never agreed to those restrictions," Jake said. His voice echoed in the huge room. "Humans were never part of the sacred accords. We were not even in the galaxy when they were written." The Granite Collective rumbled their anger. These aliens looked like walking mountains made of gray stone. Their speaker, Stone Speaker Korth, had a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "Age does not matter," Korth said. "The accords exist to keep peace. All species must follow them or face punishment. Humans are young and violent. They do not understand the way things work." Jake felt his anger rising, but he kept his voice calm. "We understand perfectly. You want us to stay in our little corner and never grow. You want us to ask permission before we breathe." The Aquan delegation turned their backs to Jake. These blue-skinned aliens lived in water tanks on their floating platform. They had been friends with humans once, or so Jake had thought. Now they acted like humans carried a disease. "The evidence is clear," said the Aquan speaker through her water-filled helmet. "Humans have expanded too fast. They have built 112 colonies in just 50 years. They have made friends with 37 species that were not part of galactic civilization. They have created technologies that bypass our patent laws." Dr. Sam Parker stepped forward. "Those species asked for our help," he said. "The Kaleri were dying from a plague. The Nomad fleet was running out of fuel. The crystal miners were trapped in collapsed tunnels. We helped them because it was right." "You helped them because you wanted their resources," said a member of the Hive Collective. These insect-like creatures clicked and buzzed when they talked. "You give them medicine and technology, then you take their metals and energy. It is conquest by kindness." Colonel Lisa Hayes could not stay quiet anymore. "That's not true," she said. "We share technology freely. We don't demand payment. Half the species we helped have never given us anything in return, and that's fine with use." High Counselor Vex Thara raised her crystal hand for silence. "The Council has reviewed all evidence. Humans refuse to accept limits. They ignore warnings. They believe they can do whatever they want because they learn quickly and adapt fast." "Learning and adapting are crimes now?" Jake asked. "When they threaten the natural order, yes," Vex Thara replied. "The galaxy has rules. Species have roles to play. Some rule, some serve, some create, some consume. Humans want to play every role at once." Jake looked around the chamber at the 12 alien species. The bird-like aerial hunters sat on perches, their feathers ruffled with annoyance. The plant-like forest collective swayed on their platform, their leaves rustling with disapproval. The energy beings called the light shapers flickered with colors that probably meant anger in their language. Every single species was united against humanity. It didn't matter that humans had stopped 3 wars, cured 5 plagues, and saved countless lives. It didn't matter that human colonies were peaceful and prosperous. What mattered was that humans refused to stay in the box these ancient species had built for them. "We call for a vote," said Stone Speaker Korth, "all in favor of expelling the human species from galactic civilization." One by one, the platforms lit up with voting lights. The Zephyrians voted yes. The Granite Collective voted yes. The Aquans voted yes. Jake watched as every single species raised their hand or tentacle or wing to vote against humanity. 12 votes for expulsion. 0 votes against. High Counselor Vexthara stood up, her crystal body catching the light from above. "The human species is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All trade agreements are cancelled. All territorial claims beyond the Sol system are declared void. All human colonies in Council space are illegal and must be abandoned within 1 standard year." Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "You can't do this," he said. "We have millions of people living on those worlds. Families, children, entire communities. They can return to Earth," Vexthara said without emotion. "Or they can be removed by force. The choice is yours. What about the species we've helped?" Dr. Parker asked. "The Kaleri still need medical supplies. The Nomad fleet depends on our fuel technology. They will learn to survive without human interference," said the Hive Collective speaker. "It will be better for them in the long run." Colonel Hayes stepped closer to Jake. "Sir, we should go," she whispered. "There's nothing more we can do here." But Jake wasn't ready to give up. He had one more thing to say. "You think you're protecting the galaxy," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "But you're just protecting your own power. You're afraid that humans will show everyone else that things don't have to be the way they've always been." The council members looked down at him with expressions that ranged from amusement to contempt. They thought they had won. They thought they had put the troublesome humans back in their place. "Humans are dangerous because they refuse to accept that some things are impossible," Vexthara said. "They always want to change things, improve things, make things better. This attitude threatens the stability we have maintained for thousands of years." Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "You're right," he said. "We do refuse to accept that things are impossible. We do want to change things and make them better. And you know what happens when you back humans into a corner?" The aliens waited for his answer. "We get creative," Jake said. "We find new ways to solve old problems. We break rules that everyone said couldn't be broken. You think you're punishing us, but you're actually setting us free." Stone Speaker Korth rumbled with laughter. "Free to do what? Hide in your single solar system while the rest of the galaxy ignores you?" "Free to prove that your way isn't the only way," Jake replied. "Free to show everyone else what's possible when you stop listening to people who say it can't be done." And massive doors began to close behind them. Jake, Lisa, and Sam walked toward the exit as the council members talked among themselves in their various alien languages. They seemed pleased with their decision. As they reached the doors, Jake turned back one more time. "You'll regret this," he called out. "Not because we'll seek revenge, but because you'll realize too late that you threw away your best chance for a better galaxy." The doors closed with a sound like thunder. The 3 humans stood alone in the hallway outside, surrounded by alien guards who watched them with suspicious eyes. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked. Jake straightened his tie and picked up his briefcase. "Now we go home and show them what humans do when we're not bound by their rules." Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the last transport vessel lift off from New Terra. The planet below had been beautiful once, with green forests and blue oceans that reminded everyone of Earth. 3 million people. had called it home for 20 years. Now it was empty except for the wind blowing through abandoned cities. "All civilians are clear, Captain," said Commander Nina Ross from her position at the communications station. "The industrial facilities have been stripped clean. Everything valuable has been loaded onto the cargo ships." Alex nodded, but didn't feel good about it. New Terra was the 17th human colony they had evacuated in the past month. The Zephyrian fleet was coming, and they would bomb anything humans had built. It was better to run than to watch families die. "Execute Emergency Protocol 7, Alex ordered. "Set the charges." Protocol 7 was something no human had wanted to create. It meant destroying everything they had built so the aliens couldn't use it. Factories, schools, hospitals, homes where children had grown up and families had lived happy lives. All of it would be gone in a few minutes. The explosions lit up the night side of New Terra like a string of tiny suns. Alex watched his ship's sensors as the readings went dark one by one. Another human world was gone, not destroyed by enemy weapons, but by human hands to keep it from falling into alien control. "Jump to hyperspace," Alex said. "Take us home." The stars stretched into lines as the UECC did hyperspace. They were heading back to Earth, carrying refugees and bad news. The alien species that had thrown humanity out of the Galactic Council were not content to simply ignore them. They wanted humans gone completely. On Earth, President Katie Brooks stood in the war room beneath the rebuilt Geneva complex. The room was full of screens showing the positions of human ships and colonies across the galaxy. Red warnings flashed as another colony reported alien ships approaching. The circle of human-controlled space was getting smaller every day. "General." Rick Stone walked to the center of the room and activated the main display. The holographic galaxy appeared above their heads, with tiny lights showing human settlements. Most of the lights were yellow or red now, meaning they were under threat or already abandoned. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Brooks said to the assembled leaders, "we are facing the end of human expansion into space. The Council species have made their intentions clear. They want us trapped in the Sol system, reduced to a single world that poses no threat to their power." General Stone pointed to different areas of the galaxy. "The Zephyrians are leading the effort to remove us from the outer rim. The Granite Collective is blocking our trade routes. The Aquans are hunting our exploration ships. Even species we helped are turning against us because they're afraid of Council punishment." Director of Intelligence Carol White stepped forward with a tablet full of reports. "Our sources inside Council space confirmed that this is a coordinated campaign. They call it the Human Containment Initiative. The goal is to force us back to Earth and keep us there permanently." President Brooks felt anger building in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "How many people are we talking about?" 43 million humans live outside the Sol system," General Stone replied. "Most are on established colonies, but we also have research stations, mining operations, trading posts, and exploration crews scattered across 200 star systems. Can we fight them?" asked Secretary of Defense Paul Gray. "Not with conventional weapons," General Stone admitted. "The Zephyrian fleet alone outnumbers us 10 to 1. If all 12 Council species work together, we're looking at odds of 100 to 1 or worse." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Humanity had built faster ships and better weapons than many species, but they couldn't overcome that kind of numerical disadvantage in a direct fight. "What about our allies?" President Brooks asked. "The species we've helped over the years?" Carol White shook her head. "Most of them are too afraid to help us publicly. The Kalari sent a secret message saying they're grateful for the medical aid we provided, but they can't risk Council punishment. The Nomad fleet has gone dark completely. The crystal miners are pretending they never met us." President Brooks walked to the window that looked out over Lake Geneva. The city was full of refugees from the outer colonies, people who had lost their homes, because humanity had dared to dream of a place among the stars. "There has to be another way," she said. "Humans didn't come this far just to give up and hide on one planet." That's when Dr. Maya Chun entered the room. She was the head of the Prometheus Research Division, a secret project that had been working on advanced technologies for the past 5 years. She carried a briefcase that she set on the conference table with unusual care. "Madam President," Dr. Chun said, "I think we have options the council species don't know about." Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Dr. Chun was known for her brilliant work on energy systems and computer technology, but she had been very secretive about her recent projects. "Show us," President Brooks said. Dr. Chun opened her briefcase and pulled out 3 small devices. They didn't look like much, just metal cubes with blinking lights, but she handled them like they were made of precious gems. "For the past 5 years, my team has been working on technologies that the council species consider impossible," she began. "They have rigid ideas about how the universe works. They think certain laws of physics cannot be broken. They believe consciousness and matter are completely separate things. They assume time only moves in one direction." "What are you saying?" General Stone asked. "I'm saying they're wrong," Dr. Chun replied with a smile. "The universe is much more flexible than they realize. These devices represent 3 breakthrough technologies that could change everything." She picked up the first cube. "This is a quantum consciousness interface. It allows a person's mind to exist in multiple locations at once. A ship's captain could literally be in several places at the same time, making decisions based on information from across the galaxy." The second cube glowed with a soft blue light. "This is a reality anchor. It creates a field where human-defined physics take precedence over standard galactic laws. Inside this field, our ships could move faster than light without using hyperspace. Our weapons could ignore shields by convincing them not to exist." The third cube seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "And this is a temporal paradox engine. It doesn't just affect the present or the future. It can retroactively change the past in small ways, creating probability loops that favor human outcomes." The room was completely silent. Everyone stared at the 3 cubes as if they were looking at magic. "Are you telling us," President Brooks said slowly, "that we can break the laws of physics?" "I'm telling you that the laws of physics are more like suggestions when you understand how to work with quantum probability," Dr. Chun replied. "The council species have never explored these possibilities because they're afraid of disrupting the cosmic order they've spent thousands of years maintaining." "How do we know these things actually work?" asked General Stone. Dr. Chun smiled and pressed a button on the first cube. Suddenly, there were 2 of her standing in the room. Both versions spoke at the same time. "Because we've been testing them for months," both Dr. Chun said together, "and the results have exceeded our wildest expectations." The second Dr. Chun faded away, leaving the original standing by the table. "The quantum consciousness interface works perfectly. The reality anchor can create zones where human technology is superior to anything the aliens have. And the temporal paradox engine can make it so that favorable outcomes become inevitable." President Brooks felt hope returning for the first time. "In months, what would we need to implement these technologies?" "Time," Dr. Chun said, "and the freedom to work without interference from council forces. If we can keep them busy with conventional resistance while we deploy these systems, we can change the balance of power in the galaxy." "How long?" General Stone asked. 6 months. "To outfit our first squadron of ships with the new technology," Dr. Chun replied. 1 year to have a full fleet operational. 2 years to establish permanent reality anchors around our most important colonies." President Brooks looked around the room at her advisors and military leaders. She could see the same thought in everyone's eyes. It was a desperate plan, but it was better than surrender. "Do it," she said. "Whatever resources you need, whatever support you require, you'll have it." But understand this, Dr. Chun. If these technologies don't work, humanity will be reduced to refugees on a single planet. And if they do work? Dr. Chun asked. President Brooks smiled for the first time in weeks. Then we'll show the galaxy what humans can accomplish when we stop playing by other people's rules. Captain Beth Williams sat in the command chair of the UES Ghostwalker, watching her instruments show readings that should have been impossible. According to every sensor on the ship, they were in 3 different places at the same time. The quantum consciousness interface hummed quietly behind her, keeping her mind connected to all 3 versions of reality until she chose which one to make real. Target acquired, announced Lieutenant Joe Martinez from the tactical station. 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers conducting a patrol sweep of the Kepler sector. They're looking for human ships to destroy. Beth smiled. The Zephyrians had been hunting human vessels for months, destroying cargo ships and attacking colonies. They thought they were dealing with the same old human technology they had always known. They were about to learn otherwise. Execute Phantom. Protocol, Beth ordered. Show them what impossible looks like. The Ghostwalker existed in quantum superposition, a state where it could be in multiple locations, until Beth collapsed the wave function into a single reality. To the Zephyrian sensors, the human ship appeared simultaneously in front of their formation, behind them, and alongside each individual cruiser. Impossible, came the transmission from the lead Zephyrian ship. No vessel can occupy multiple positions simultaneously. Your sensors are malfunctioning. Our sensors work fine, Beth replied. Your understanding of physics is just limited. She activated the ship's probability weapons. These weren't lasers or missiles that destroyed targets through conventional means. Instead, they fired cascades of quantum possibilities that convinced reality that the target had never existed in the first place. The weapons fired from all 3 positions at once. The Zephyrian crews suddenly found themselves floating in space, confused but unharmed, as their ships simply ceased to exist. The massive cruisers hadn't been destroyed or exploded. They had been convinced to never have been built. Zephyrian crews, this is Captain Williams. Beth broadcast on emergency frequencies. Your ships are gone, but you're alive. Small rescue. Pods are being deployed to pick you up. When you get home, tell your leaders that humans don't play by the old rules anymore. On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Doug Hayes was running a completely different kind of operation. His ship, the UES Prometheus, carried reality anchor technology that could establish what humans called possibility zones. These were regions of space where human-defined physics took precedence over the standard laws that governed the rest of the galaxy. Reality anchor deployed, reported his science officer, Lieutenant Karen Bell. The field is stable and expanding. Coverage will reach the entire asteroid belt in approximately 10 minutes. Doug watched as the Granite Collective's mining operations began to malfunction. The ancient alien machinery had operated the same way for thousands of years, using brute force methods to extract metals from asteroids. But inside the reality anchor field, the equipment was now subject to human-influenced physics that prioritized efficiency and environmental protection. The massive mining ships found their drilling equipment suddenly refusing to damage the asteroids beyond what was necessary. Their waste disposal systems began recycling materials instead of dumping toxic slag into space. Their energy systems became twice as efficient while using half the power. What is happening to our equipment? Demanded the Granite Collective supervisor over the communication channel. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Our machinery is behaving in ways that violate its programming. Your machinery is fine, Doug replied. It's just operating under better physical laws now. Laws that don't allow unnecessary destruction or waste. This is impossible, the alien supervisor rumbled. Physical laws cannot be changed by the desires of individual species. That's what we used to think too, Doug said. Then we learned that the universe is much more cooperative than anyone realized. The Granite Collective ships tried to leave the area, but found their engines wouldn't function outside the reality anchor field. The new physics had become so efficient that their old, wasteful systems couldn't operate in normal space anymore. Meanwhile, aboard the research vessel UES Innovation, Dr. Maya Chun worked with her team on the most ambitious project yet. Dr. Andy Cooper monitored temporal sensors, while Dr. Jenny Walsh calibrated the paradox engine that would let them implement retroactive improvements to the past. Temporal locks are in place, Dr. Cooper reported. We can make changes to recent events without affecting the broader timeline. Beginning retroactive optimization, Dr. Chun announced. She activated the temporal paradox engine, and reality began to shift in subtle ways. Human colonies that had been destroyed in alien attacks were suddenly discovered to have been evacuated through temporal loops. The colonists had somehow received warning messages from the future and escaped before the attacks occurred. Human scientists who had died in recent battles were found to have uploaded their consciousness to quantum storage moments before their deaths. Their knowledge and experience remained available to help the war effort. Human technologies that had been stolen by alien spies were revealed to have been deliberately modified as traps. The alien scientists who tried to reverse engineer human devices found their own equipment, becoming infected with loyalty programming that made it refuse to work against human interests. Status report, Dr. Chun requested. 17 destroyed colonies have been retroactively evacuated, Dr. Walsh reported. 43 human scientists have been recovered through consciousness transfer. Over 200 instances of technology theft have been converted into Trojan horse operations. And the aliens haven't noticed the changes? Dr. Chun asked. That's the beauty of temporal paradox engineering, Dr. Cooper explained. From their perspective, these favorable outcomes were always how things happened. They remember the events differently now, but they don't realize their memories have changed. Across the galaxy, the Council species were beginning to panic. Their reports no longer made sense. Victories against human forces were turning into defeats. Technologies they had captured were sabotaging their own systems. Human ships were appearing in impossible places and doing impossible things. High Counselor Vexthara called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The crystal-bodied alien stood before her fellow council members with growing desperation. In her voice, "The humans have gone completely insane," she declared. "They are violating the fundamental laws of reality itself. Their ships exist in multiple places simultaneously. Their weapons convince matter to stop existing. Their technology operates according to principles that should not be possible." Stone Speaker Korth of the Granite Collective rumbled his agreement. "They refuse to accept the natural limitations of the universe. They make their own rules and somehow force reality to obey them. How is this possible?" asked the representative of the Hive Collective. "Physical laws are absolute. They cannot be changed by the will of biological entities. Unless," said the Aquan delegate slowly, "the laws we thought were absolute are actually just the most commonly accepted interpretations of more flexible underlying principles." The council chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. If the humans were right, if the universe really was more flexible than they had believed, then everything the council species thought they knew about reality was wrong. "We must stop them," Vexthara said. "If they continue to spread these impossible technologies, they will destabilize the cosmic order that has maintained peace for millennia." "How do we fight an enemy that can be in multiple places at once?" Stone Speaker Korth asked. "How do we destroy ships that can convince our weapons they don't exist?" "We assemble the largest fleet in galactic history," Vexthara replied. "Every species, every ship, every weapon we possess. We will overwhelm them with pure numbers before they can spread their reality-breaking technologies to other species." But even as the Council made their plans, human influence was spreading. The Kaleri medical stations were suddenly operating, with impossible efficiency, curing diseases that had been considered incurable. The Nomad fleet found their ships could travel faster than ever before while using less fuel. The crystal miners discovered their tunnels were safer and more productive than they had ever been. Species across the galaxy were beginning to realize that the humans offered something the Council never had, the possibility that things could be better than they were, that limitations could be overcome, that the way things had always been done was not necessarily the way things had to be done forever. Back on Earth, President Katie Brooks received reports from across human space. Every mission was succeeding beyond expectations. Every new technology was working better than predicted. Every confrontation with Council forces was ending in human victory. The quantum consciousness networks are operational, reported General Stone. Our ship captains can coordinate actions across multiple star systems in real time. The reality anchor generators are being deployed to protect our most important colonies, added Dr. Chun. Within these fields, human technology has decisive advantages over alien systems, and the temporal paradox engines are ensuring that favorable outcomes become inevitable, concluded Carol White. We're not just winning battles, we're retroactively improving our chances of having won them in the first place. Admiral Ziegther stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the largest military fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. The massive ship was larger than most human cities, filled with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken. Around him stretched an armada of over 300,000 vessels from all 12 Council species. The Zephyrian admiral had been chosen to lead this force because he had never lost a battle in 500 years of military service. His crystalline face showed no emotion as he reviewed the attack plan one final time. The target was the Centauri cluster, where human intelligence suggested the rebels were building their impossible ships. All fleet commanders report ready, announced his communications. Officer, the Granite Collective's battle spheres are in position. The Aquan Deep Strike squadrons have completed their approach. The Hive Collective's swarm fighters are deployed in attack formation. Ziegther nodded. This was the largest military operation in recorded galactic history. Every Council species had contributed their most powerful ships and weapons. The plan was simple: complete destruction of human military capability, followed by the forced evacuation of all human colonies back to Earth. Begin the final jump to Centauri space, Ziegther ordered. Today, we end the human threat to galactic stability once and for all. A massive fleet entered hyperspace as one unit, creating a distortion in space-time that could be detected from several star systems away. When they emerged at the edge of the Centauri system, they expected to find heavily defended shipyards and desperate human defenders. Instead, they found Admiral Pete Jackson waiting for them with a single ship, the USS Paradox, hung in space like a challenge to everything the aliens thought they knew about reality. The ship existed in a state of controlled temporal flux, showing its past, present, and future configurations simultaneously. To the Council fleet's sensors, it appeared to be a small frigate, a massive battleship, and a swarm of fighters all at the same time. "This is Admiral Pete Jackson of the Human Defense Force," came the transmission from the impossible vessel. "You are trespassing in human space. Turn around and leave now, or discover what happens when you attack a civilization that doesn't believe in limitations." Admiral Ziegther felt confusion for the first time in centuries. His sensors were showing readings that made no sense. The single human ship registered as having negative mass, infinite energy output, and a crew of both 0 and several thousand people. "One ship against 300,000, Ziegther said to his bridge crew. "The humans have truly lost their minds." He opened a communication channel to the human vessel. "Admiral Jackson, You face the combined might of the Galactic Council. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Admiral Ziegther, Pete Jackson replied, you're about to learn why humans are dangerous. We don't just refuse to accept defeat. We refuse to accept that defeat is even possible. Ziegther had heard. Enough. He gave the order for a full fleet bombardment. 300,000 ships fired simultaneously, releasing enough energy to destroy a small moon. The space around the human ship filled with weapons fire that should have vaporized anything within. 1,000 kilometers. The paradox simply wasn't there when the weapons arrived. Impossible, Ziegther said, watching his tactical display. No ship can move that fast. We didn't move through space, came Jackson's voice over the communication. System. We moved through time instead. Your weapons fired at where we were, but we were already in your past, before you decided to attack. The human ship's weapons began firing back. But these weren't conventional energy beams or missiles. They were probability cannons that fired. Alternate histories directly at the Council fleet. Reality began to shift around the massive armada. In one timeline, the fleet had suffered critical systems failures during their hyperspace jump. In another timeline, they had never left their home systems because the political situation that led to the war had been different. In a third timeline, they were discovering that their weapons had been built with human-supplied components that included loyalty programming. Admiral Ziegther watched in horror as his perfect fleet began to dissolve into chaos. Ships found themselves in wrong positions, their navigation systems convinced they were somewhere else entirely. Weapons refused to target the human vessel, their targeting computers somehow programmed to consider humans as friendly forces. Status report. Ziegther demanded. Admiral, our ships are reporting impossible system behaviors. His tactical officer replied. The Granite Collective battlespheres are convinced they're mining equipment and refuse to fire weapons. The Aquan. Squadrons think they're rescue vessels and are trying to save human lives. The Hive fighters believe they're pollinating flowers instead of conducting combat operations. How is this possible? Ziegther asked. Admiral Jackson to Council Fleet, came the transmission from the Paradox. Your ships are now operating under human-influenced probability matrices. You have two choices: withdraw immediately or spend the rest of eternity discovering new ways to lose battles you should have won. But the chaos was only beginning. As Ziegther struggled to understand what was happening to his fleet, human reinforcements began arriving through temporal portals that opened in space around them. The U.E.'s Victory, commanded by Captain Troy Baker, emerged from a timeline where the battle had already been won. The ship's hull showed scorch marks from weapons that hadn't been fired yet, and its crew wore expressions of weary satisfaction from a victory they hadn't yet achieved. Admiral Jackson, Captain Baker transmitted, we're here to help clean up. In our timeline, this battle ended 3 hours ago with complete Council surrender. The U.E.'s Retribution, under Captain Ruby Foster, arrived from a future where humanity had developed even more advanced technologies. Her ship flickered in and out of existence, existing in a state of quantum uncertainty that made it impossible to target or damage. The temporal cascade is stable, Captain Foster reported. Council timeline resistance is minimal. They're accepting the new reality parameters without significant rejection. More human ships continued to arrive from different timelines and probability states. Some came from futures where the war had already ended. Others came from pasts where humanity had never been expelled from the Council. A few came from alternate realities where humans and aliens had always been allies. Admiral Ziegther realized that his massive fleet was now outnumbered by ships that existed in impossible states of being. Vessels that had been destroyed were regenerating through temporal loops. Weapons that had been fired were unfiring themselves and appearing in human hands instead. All ships, he ordered desperately, retreat to minimum safe distance. Regroup and await new orders. But when his fleet tried to withdraw, they discovered that their hyperspace engines were now programmed with human safety protocols. The ships refused to jump to any destination that might be used to stage further attacks on human targets. Admiral, his engineering officer reported, "Our hyperspace drives are operational, but they will only take us to non-military destinations." The engines seem to believe that preventing warfare is their primary function. Admiral Jackson's voice came over the communication system one final time. "Admiral Ziegler, your fleet is welcome to leave. In fact, we insist on it. But understand that you are now carrying human influence technology. When you return to your home worlds, you'll find that your people have some new ideas about how the galaxy should be run." As the Council fleet reluctantly began their withdrawal, each ship carried with it quantum-level changes that would spread through their societies like seeds of transformation. The weapons that refused to target civilians. The computers that prioritized cooperation over competition. The communication systems that translated not just language but intent, making it impossible to lie or deceive. Admiral Jackson to all. Human forces. Pete broadcast as the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace. Phase 1 is complete. The Council fleet has been neutralized and converted into carriers for our social reformation protocols. Captain Baker checked his temporal sensors. "What's our next move, Admiral?" "We wait," Jackson replied. "In approximately 6 months, every Council world will be experiencing spontaneous outbreaks of democracy, individual rights, and scientific curiosity. Their people will start asking why they need rulers who forbid progress and exploration." "Captain." Foster smiled as she monitored probability cascades across the galaxy. "The quantum reformation virus is already spreading. Council citizens are beginning to question why some species are considered superior to others, why exploration should be limited, why cooperation isn't better than domination." Admiral Jackson looked out at the stars where the Council fleet had vanished. "They wanted to destroy us because we refused to accept their limitations. Instead, we've given them the gift of refusing to accept limitations themselves." Back on the flagship of the retreating Council fleet, Admiral Ziegler sat in his command chair and tried to understand what had happened. His fleet had been defeated, without a single ship being destroyed. His weapons had been turned into tools of peace. His soldiers were asking questions about why they were fighting people who had only wanted to help others. President Katie Brooks stood before the largest gathering of sentient beings in galactic history. The new Galactic Assembly Hall stretched as far as the eye could see, its walls built using human probability architecture that allowed the space to grow larger whenever more delegates needed seats. 347 different species had sent representatives, most of whom had never been acknowledged by the old Council. The old Council chambers on Nexus Prime sat empty now, their crystal walls reflecting nothing but shadows and memories of a dying age. The 12 species that had once ruled the galaxy with iron fists found themselves sitting in a section marked Advisory Panel, honored for their experience, but no longer in control of anyone's destiny. 6 months ago, President Brooks began, her voice carried by translation devices that didn't just convert words but intentions. This galaxy was ruled by fear. Fear of change, fear of growth, fear of new ideas. Species were told they had fixed roles to play and fixed limits they could never exceed. In the audience, former High Counselor Vex Thara listened with her crystalline features reflecting a confusion that her species had never experienced before. The quantum reformation protocols, carried by the returning Council fleet, had spread through Zephyrian society like wildfire. For the first time in their history, individual Zephyrians were questioning why they needed leaders who made decisions for them without asking their opinions. Today, President Brooks continued, we offer something different. A galaxy where your potential is limited only by your imagination and your willingness to help others reach their potential too. The Aquan delegation, led by their new representative, Flowsinger Merdala bubbled with excitement in their water-filled section. The human probability-based diplomacy had taught them that negotiations didn't have to result in winners and losers. With proper understanding of quantum possibility, every conversation could end with all parties getting what they truly needed, thought Captain Alex Turner, now serving as the first human ambassador to the new Galactic Assembly, worked with delegates from dozens of species to establish the new system of governance. The Kalari delegation thanked him personally for the medical technologies that had not only cured their plague, but given them longer, healthier lives than they had ever imagined possible. The old system assumed that some species were naturally superior to others. Alex explained to a group of newly arrived delegates from the Outer Rim. We've learned that every species has unique strengths. The key is creating systems that let everyone contribute what they do best. Even some of the former council species were adapting to the new reality. Crystal Voice Thane, a young representative of the Granite Collective, had embraced human concepts of flexible thinking. His people were discovering that their legendary stubbornness could be redirected from resistance to change into persistence in solving problems. The old ways taught us that stone cannot flow, Thane said during a committee meeting. Humans have shown us that even the most solid principles can dance when the music is right. Dr. Maya Chun, now serving as the first director of Galactic Innovation, stood before a display showing the spread of human-influenced technology throughout the galaxy. The quantum consciousness networks allowed instant communication across galactic distances. The reality anchor generators let species reshape their environments according to their needs, rather than simply adapting to harsh conditions. The temporal paradox engines help civilizations correct past mistakes and build better futures. We're not keeping these technologies for ourselves, Dr. Chun announced to the assembled delegates. We're sharing them with everyone, because we've learned that the universe becomes more interesting when everyone gets to participate in rewriting the rules. The Nomad fleet, which had spent centuries wandering space in search of resources, now served as the backbone of the new galactic communication network. Their ships, enhanced with human probability drives, could be anywhere in the galaxy within hours. They had gone from being desperate refugees to being the most important logistics organization in known space. The Crystal miners had transformed from a struggling operation into the galaxy's primary source of rare materials. Human reality anchors allowed them to extract resources without damaging the environments they worked in, and temporal paradox engines let them undo any mistakes before they became permanent problems. But the greatest change was in the nature of galactic civilization itself. The rigid hierarchy that had kept species in fixed roles for millennia was dissolving into something more fluid and dynamic. Species that had been ignored for thousands of years were suddenly contributing ideas that revolutionized entire fields of science and art. Admiral Pete Jackson, now head of the Galactic Defense Force, commanded fleets where human vessels fought alongside ships from hundreds of other species. The crews were integrated, with humans learning alien perspectives, while aliens learned human adaptability and creative problem-solving. We're not the galaxy's police force, Jackson explained to a gathering of military commanders from across known space. We're the galaxy's possibility force. When problems arise, we don't just solve them. We find solutions that make everyone stronger. The old council species were struggling to adapt, but even they were beginning to see the benefits of the new system. The Hive Collective had discovered that individual creativity enhanced group efficiency rather than threatening it. The aerial hunters found that cooperation led to better results than competition. The Forest Collective learned that growth was more satisfying when it helped others flourish too. Former Admiral Zeke Thur, who had led the failed attack on humanity, now served as a military advisor to the new system. The probability modifications his fleet had carried home had transformed Zephyrian society so completely that the concept of conquest through force seemed like ancient history. I spent 500 years believing that strength came from the ability to destroy enemies, he told a gathering of young officers from various species. Humans taught me that true strength comes from the ability to turn enemies into friends. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some members of the old council species resisted the changes, forming small groups that tried to maintain the traditional ways. But they found themselves increasingly isolated as their own people embraced the possibilities that human technology and philosophy offered. President Brooks concluded her address by activating a galactic-scale reality anchor that had been built through the cooperation of dozens of species. The device would ensure that the entire galaxy operated under physics that prioritized cooperation, growth, and individual potential over domination and stagnation. The old council threw humanity out because we refused to accept their limitations. She said, "Today, we invite everyone to join us in building a galaxy where the only limitations are the ones we choose to accept." Jake Morrison, the former ambassador who had witnessed humanity's expulsion, now served as the first speaker for galactic unity. As he called the first official session to order, representatives from species across the galaxy took their seats, in formations that shifted and changed to reflect the dynamic nature of their new civilization. 2 years ago, Jake said, I stood in the old council chambers and watched 12 species vote to expel humanity from galactic civilization. They said we were too young, too violent, too unpredictable. They said we would never understand how to maintain cosmic balance. He looked around at the vast assembly, seeing species that had never spoken to each other before working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. They were right about one thing, Jake continued. We never did learn to maintain their version of cosmic balance. Instead, we learned to create a better balance, one that includes everyone and excludes no one. The session began with a moment of silence for the old galaxy that had died and gratitude for the new one being born. Human-built probability fields ensured that every voice would be heard, every idea would be considered, and every possibility would be explored. In the end, being thrown out of the council hadn't been humanity's punishment. It had been the galaxy's liberation. The universe had learned the most important lesson humanity had to offer. Sometimes the best way to follow the rules is to rewrite them entirely, making sure everyone gets to help write the new ones.